Hi.
Hi, I'm excited to do this.
Me too. I am so excited about bringing Big Crone Energy back. Uh,
Yes, I'm glad you're doing it.
yeah,
I'm
a
glad you are rejuvenated.
much tighter focus than we had before when I was just like, I guess I have to do a podcast. Um,
My theory is anything that we do, it should be fun. If it's not fun, we don't need to do it.
yeah, I mean, I was having fun doing it, but I felt like the purpose of it wasn't clear. Bringing this back, this time with a real sort of emphasis on like, there's age discrimination, right? Like, I want all of my guests to be over a certain age. You don't have to call yourself a crone because I know some people balk at that, but we
Hmm.
are women of a certain age who have been around for a long time in the community, doing our work in the world, writing and playing music and recording albums, in your case, writing books, teaching students, being activists and organizers and artists and dancers. And there was this moment when I was writing about this the other night, and I thought, I want this to have the energy of when Kamala Harris was sitting in the Senate or sitting in an interview with a man, and they would talk over her,
Hmm.
and she would say, "Excuse me, I'm speaking."
That was awesome.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
And that's what big energy is, right?
Here, here.
That's what I want this podcast to be like. Excuse us, the elder women are speaking,
Yes, I
right?
love
So
that energy.
listen in because we've got something to say. We have life experience. We're not perfect. We're not trying to be. We're not pretending to be anymore, right?
Exactly.
Um, because it's too hard to
Yeah.
pretend you're perfect. And
And
our life force is limited at this point. And I don't mean like,
indeed.
we're dying. I mean, we know how precious our life force is. Why waste it on silly things like trying to be perfect?
And in a way, death, we are closer to death.
I
So
think about it.
me too. I think
Yeah.
about it a lot and how, statistically speaking, I've got about 20, maybe 25 years
Yep.
to really have a meaningful life
Yep.
before I start winding down. And that's if I'm lucky,
Yep.
if nothing goes wrong. So by
Hmm.
gosh, I'm going to make sure those moments are precious and
Yeah.
meaningful for me. And impressing other people just does not matter really at all anymore. Hardly at all, anyway.
Impressing other people doesn't hardly matter at all anymore.
It's so freeing.
It's incredible, right? It's incredible. Like, I just like things that would have wound me up for months years ago. I shrug them off now, right? I mean, there's still things that can wind me up for months, don't get me wrong, but it's not my norm to be wound up about what somebody said or thought or assumed about me. It's like, I know who I am.
Yep.
I know who I am. I know what my faults and complexes and the parts of me that still need to be healed and my shadows. We're aware of all of that.
Yes. Yes.
And I think something happens as we approach this age where we just forgive ourselves,
Yeah.
you know? We just get softer. And like,
Hmm.
that's still a thing. I'm still working on it and I'm still okay, even with these shadows, these wounds that still rear their heads.
Yeah, you
Um,
learn how to be okay with yourself.
yes. Yeah. So, I mean, geez, we just jumped right into it.
I know. I was wondering, are we doing it already?
I think we are. And Sharon, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on. Just so the audience knows, Sharon and I, once in a while, get to see each other. And the last two times we saw each other, once she came here with Winter, and we just hung out in pajamas for, I don't know, 3 days. We just
It was
ate food and
awesome.
took naps and
And
went in the
talked
hot
about
tub
everything.
and talked, gabbed, just gabbed and gabbed. And then the last time I saw her, Sharon and Hexenfest had me out to do a workshop at Hexenfest, and I got COVID while I was there, and so did Sharon. I think we were
Good
the only two.
times. We know how to party.
But we had planned after Hexenfest to sort of escape away to Mendocino. I had always wanted to see that coast, and we wanted to spend some sister time together. And so we drove up there sick, and and again it was like pajamas. We ate really good food,
We did.
and then we just gabbed until we wore ourselves out and had to nap. It's
We
one of
may
the
have been,
reasons why I wanted to have you on, is because it's so easy. Our
yeah.
conversations are so easy. And there were so many times during those days together where said out loud, "Oh my God, we should be voice recording this."
That's true.
People
Yeah,
need
we
to
can
hear
just
this
talk.
conversation.
I loved that even though we had to quarantine, we had the best view you could possibly ask for.
Stunning.
There's something bonding about being sick together too.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen you now. You've seen
It's
me
just,
now.
this is what it is.
Yep, yep. So I mentioned Hexenfest, which is a
Yes.
festival that you've been organizing and putting on for 10 years now?
12
12
years.
years. Can you
Yep.
talk a little bit about Hexenfest and what it is and
Yes, I'd
why
love
and
to.
how it
Um,
started and what your vision is?
yes. So Winter, my partner, and I were touring musicians
Hmm.
forever. And we kept having to go to the East Coast to find all these cool little fairy festivals all over the place. And
Right.
I wondered, why don't we have something like that here? So I teamed up with our mutual friend Anar, and we decided to create a witchy music and arts festival. And Anar did it with me for a few years and then wanted to step back, and I panicked. But then decided I'm just going to keep moving forward with this.
Hmm.
And a few people who had been attending stepped in to help. And now I have an amazing team that I co produce it with. And we get together in the woods in the fall here in Northern California, and we do ritual and workshops and magic, and we have witchy musical concerts. Winter and I always play. We bring in some of our favorite bands that we've toured with, and we generally have a good time being witchy animists in the woods and reminding each other that we do share our weirdnesses with other like-minded people, and it's generally a pretty darn good time.
I was quarantined for most of it.
I know you're gonna have to come out again.
I,
That was
I
unfair.
definitely want to come out again. Absolutely. It's actually on my calendar for this year. And I'm sort of putting other things around it, like Hexenfest is it has priority.
Oh,
Because
hooray.
I want to experience more of it. I want to actually meet more of the people there. I met
Yeah.
some amazing people there that I had never known before. That was fun. And what I saw was like it felt really laid back, right?
Hmm.
Like it wasn't overscheduled. There weren't too many things to do. The food was, I thought, amazing.
Oh, good. Glad
Um,
to hear that.
and the accommodations were comfortable,
Yeah.
and the entertainment was amazing. I think
Yay.
that I have to say the only night I went to entertainment was the night that you played, Sharon, and I only lasted like half the night. I'm like, I gotta go lay down. Um,
Yeah. You
but
deserve to have the full experience, not the COVID experience.
yeah, yeah. And I think going back next year, right, like having familiar faces there, easier too. Like, oh, we talked last year. It's fun, I have some new Facebook friends because of Hexenfest, and I'm really enjoying that and sort of getting to know the little sliver of people that we
Yeah.
get to know on social media. So it was super fun. And
I love seeing that too, that, oh, you're now hooked up with this other person who I love. I love that.
yeah, yeah. And it was great to sort of be volunteered to be in the opening ritual. I didn't know before I got there, and I wasn't in any of the planning meetings, so I was a little like unprepared, but it was very sweet. I think that it was really interesting to watch. This is about you and me now. So
Yeah.
to watch you sort of go from like, I don't feel good. I don't know what's going on. My throat is sore. I'm a little bit dizzy. And, you know, all of the feelings that a lot of women our age
Mhm.
undergo as we realize where we are in our life, where we are on our life path, what we hoped to accomplish, the dreams and aspirations that we held, and the reality of where we are. And I watched you sort of struggling with some of that at the beginning of the weekend.
Mhm.
And even though you were, I think it was the next morning that you tested positive for COVID, but
Yeah, that
you
could be.
got yourself together and went on stage and were amazing. And I remember you coming out of that and being like, I don't know what I'm worried about. I'm great at what I do.
I really felt it that night, which was kind of amazing because I was having such bad vertigo, I wasn't even sure how I was going to stand up.
Yeah.
But there's something, I'm just in my mode and then it summons up and there it is.
So for listeners, um, Sharon Knight is a singer, songwriter, musician, and you can find her work where? Just tell people where they can find your music.
SharonKnight.net, my website, is really the best central location to find out of all of the other little tendrils.
Right. So Sharon, Sharon, Knight, KNIGHT.net.
Yep.
And then the best place if you're going to buy her music digitally is to get it from Band
Bandcamp.
Bandcamp
Yep.
because they pay more pennies on the
Yes.
dollar
They
than
pay quite a lot
Spotify
of pennies, actually.
or any other
Yeah.
streaming
We
places
get,
where you can get their music.
yep. And you can download it and stream it on Bandcamp.
Hmm.
And they're just friendly folks, even though they've been bought out a couple of times. They haven't ruined it yet.
Hmm.
Whoever the current owner is has not ruined Bandcamp yet.
Good. That's good because like trying to find new places to show our work is always
It's
like,
like you have to jump around all the time
yeah,
because, are we allowed to say the the term enshittification here on your
yes,
podcast?
yes,
That happens, and it's a business model, where a company lures you in by making themselves really appealing and cool, and then they
hmm,
slowly start shifting that benefit away from you,
yeah,
and it's built into the business model.
it is. Yeah, it's sort of friendly, helpful, accommodating, interested, and then just like these are the new rules, and if you want to stay
Right,
here, you're gonna do this, or this is the
right.
new pricing, and if you want to stay here, this
Yeah,
you're gonna just have to put
exactly.
up with it.
Yep,
And
exactly.
oftentimes, like as in the case of Meta, right? We stay because
Because we've built up a whole community. Our friends are there. They've also been lured in.
yeah, yeah. And I also think that it also has something to do with our age, Sharon, and the age of
That
the
could be.
people that we
Mhm.
communicate with on Meta are
Mhm.
less likely to be like, let me go figure out how to use this new platform,
That
right?
certainly seems to be the case.
Yeah. And that's part of aging,
I
right? Like, I don't
suppose.
have energy for this,
Yeah.
right? Like, I'm on Blue Sky now. I've made like two posts. I'm on Threads. I was good about Threads for about a month.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know who any of these people are. I don't know how this platform really works.
Yeah.
And so you go back to what's familiar, what feels like home, right?
Mhm.
And that's how they sold Facebook to us in the very beginning, right? Is
Yep.
like, this is your community. But it's true. Like, our communities are there. And 15 years of building that is not easy to walk away from. And I was all set like 10 days ago. I was like, I'm leaving. That's it. And then, of course, our mutual friend, Ali Valkyrie,
Hmm.
said something about like we can't concede, not
Right.
1 inch, right?
Right. Yeah.
Do not, in Timothy Snyder's book on tyranny, where he talks about not conceding in advance.
Here,
This
here.
really isn't in advance, right? Um,
Indeed.
but not conceding to what we think is going to happen, to stay and influence however we can. And some of it is just by staying there and being who we are and not being
Right.
afraid and
Yeah.
not
I will
conceding.
probably I will probably stay there,
Mhm.
but I am definitely looking for other options as well. And if any of them become better, I will happily leave.
Right.
But so far, since the moment I got on Facebook, I've had the best engagement. I've built my entire music career on it,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it it continues to be a very useful tool for getting my work into the world.
Yeah. You're also on Patreon,
I am. Yep.
and you're also have a Discord server.
I do. I'm really enjoying Discord.
Uh-huh.
I have a server called Sharon Knight's Ring of Enchantment, and y'all can come hang out there if you want to. We talk about how to re-enchant the world, which, if I had to pick one single thing to distill down as my driving and motivating force, it would definitely be to re-enchant the world. How are we doing that?
So what does that mean to you?
What it means to me is, and it took me a while to figure this out,
Hmm.
but it distills down to the world is alive and we have forgotten how to see that
Yeah.
because perception is trained. We're taught at a very early age how to view the world and what is real versus what isn't real. And
Hmm.
if we don't toe the line, we're not going to fit in with society. We're not
Hmm.
going to get jobs. We're going to be ostracized. We're going to be considered crazy. So get in line. And we have come to adopt a wholly mechanistic view of our world, largely because of science and the Industrial Revolution. And I adore science. So let's
Yep.
not ever misinterpret. I will not ever be a science denier. I think science and spirituality or magic, whatever we want to call
Mm.
it,
Yep.
exactly.
Yep.
It's like looking into a fish tank from a different angle. You are
Yep.
looking at the world, but you're just coming at it from these two different angles. And don't we want to have a well-rounded view? So anyway,
I love when science catches up to the magic that we've
I love
always
that
known.
too.
I
I
love it
love
when they're like, we discovered this amazing thing, and I'm like, oh, we knew that all along.
that. Yep. Yep, that always is very satisfying.
Yeah.
So, one of the problems with the Industrial Revolution and the scientific view that came up during that time is we've been very interested in figuring out how things work. So we've taken things apart and looked at them in all of their little pieces and figured out that there's this process, there's this mechanism for how plants photosynthesize, for example. And
Hmm.
we've gotten so used to looking only through that lens that we forget to see the holistic aspect of this being. Plants are beings. They're not resources for us to chop up and use.
Right.
The earth is not an ATM machine,
Right.
and we are in dire straits because we as humanity have been treating the earth as an ATM machine and
Right.
not as a living being to be in relationship with. I'm an animist. If I were to describe my spirituality with one word, it would be animist. Nature is alive. I mean, there was a time when we didn't even believe animals had souls.
Right.
Apparently, this comes from Descartes.
Hmm.
And I look at my cats and I just think, how can you not see the soul radiating out of this being?
Hmm.
Like, how is that even possible? And so we've been unspeakably cruel to animals because we're not hurting them. They're machines. They have no souls.
Yeah. They're
And
food.
That's a criminal viewpoint.
Hmm. Hmm.
So to re-enchant the world to me is to shift our perspective such that we start observing there is so much more aliveness in everything.
Hmm.
You know, plants have a spirit around them. This is what brought me into witchcraft movements is when I was about going through puberty, as happens to a lot of people. I started perceiving auras around plants and I wanted to know what they were, and nobody could tell me. And my
Yeah.
parents weren't talking about it, and my teachers weren't talking about it.
Hmm.
And this started when I was 12 or 13. And I didn't get any satisfying answers to that until I discovered Anderson fairy tradition American witchcraft in when I was 18.
Hmm.
And they had satisfying answers, and I've been sucked into this whole world of paganism and magic and witchcraft and animism ever since.
Hmm.
And for all of its problems, here I am, 41 years later, still right there, as frustrated as I can get sometimes with the peopliness, because people are gonna people no matter where we all are. We do our people thing.
We do.
But
We're
still,
not all healed. We're not all better. We still have our complexes. We still have our grooves that we get stuck in. And and the tradition itself, the magic itself, the energy, the lore, the oral tradition remains what it always has, right?
yeah.
Which is like so incredibly beautiful, but also intellectually challenging, spiritually challenging.
Mhm.
It continues to challenge me. Like I'll go back and I'll read something Victor Anderson said or something Anar said to me or something, you know, and I'm challenged again in a different way, on a different level, or some things that even my teacher said to me or would question. My teacher was really good with hard questions,
Yeah.
blunt, hard questions, right? That still circulate,
Hmm.
that still come up for review. Like, where are you with that now? And the relationship to nature and science is
Hmm.
embedded in the tradition.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful for coming to that tradition. And, it could have been another tradition, but that's the one that I found.
Yeah.
And I was 18, and I definitely come from a pretty troubled childhood. So, oh, where was I going with that? Here's an edit point for you.
Well, you're talking about the tradition, talking about animism, talking
Oh,
about people in the tradition, and it's like we're as diverse as any other subculture, right?
right, right.
Which is
It's
in
full of
some ways to
people.
say not very diverse at all,
Yeah, in some ways, that's very true.
and in some ways quite diverse, right? And we don't all agree on everything, and it's not a panacea, it's not a fantasy, it's not a fantastical community. Um,
I'm not sure that exists.
right. But I think the difference between fairy trad and other traditions is that we're honest enough to say so,
Hmm. Right.
right? We're not pretending that it's all, we're all besties, right?
Yeah.
I think the work in fairy trad has always been to know yourself, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And to heal yourself and
And
to
if
be
you know
yourself,
yourself,
right? And so
go ahead.
that's a lot of really strong personalities, right? That's a
That's
lot of
very
really
true.
strong,
Yeah.
empowered people who have strong, empowered ideas and opinions.
Mhm.
And if we were all getting along, I think it would be a cult.
For sure. I was just thinking that how
Yeah.
if we all shared, it becomes a dogma. The beauty of any kind of magical practice is how it unfurls within an individual's relationship to it. And I think that's what makes it beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think magic changes over the generations. You know,
Mhm.
what humanity, or the small section of humanity anyway, who is drawn to these types of practices, what they needed in the 60s is different now. So of course our traditions are going to morph and reshape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Victor said that it's a living tradition
Exactly.
and that it is going to evolve with every initiate, every practitioner is going to evolve it in some way. I don't know that we could have foreseen that it would evolve to a place where, like, I have practices in my lineage that I know nobody else has
Mhm.
because I evolved them and I
Exactly.
haven't taught them outside my lineage. And I know that that's also happened in other lineages as well, that they have very distinct kind of focuses. And yet we are dealing with the same lore, we're dealing with the same ethics, we're dealing with the same ethos, we're dealing with the same, often, sometimes the same liturgical materials,
Mhm.
right? And so it's so interesting to try to describe this to people who belong to traditions where you get the book and everybody has the same book with the same material and the same teachings. I wish that we trusted each other enough to share what we're doing in our own lines. And yet, this is where we're at right now. And it's not where we were at 15, 20 years ago. And I can't foresee where we'll be or if there will be a 15 or
Right.
20 years.
And maybe there won't be, and maybe that's okay, because
Yes,
magic morphs,
right.
and it will coalesce into a different form down the road that people need.
Hmm.
I I really see religion, there's some criticism about witches are just making things up. And I I kind of want to say, well, yeah, that's the
So are
point, isn't
so
it?
are songwriters. So are
Right.
poets.
And
So are
I
writers. So
exactly.
so are, so is my firewalking community. So, like, if we're not making stuff up and we're just like following the rule book, I don't think that that's any kind of artistry,
It's not.
creativity, and witchcraft is an art. It's a
It
magical
is.
art.
It is.
So,
And I think, certainly if you are calling what you do paganism, then, and you want to say this is what the ancients did, then go figure out what the ancients did at least. Don't talk about Celtic chakras or whatever, because that's not how the Celts did things. But that's a very specific thing. If you are looking to revive a pagan tradition from days of yore, then yes, it's perhaps not appropriate to say this is what the ancients did and then you are just making things up. But if you have studied and worked directly with subtle energies, inner plane energies, I guess you could say, enough, and you haven't just read one book, but you've read hundreds of books and you've been doing these practices for a while, then yes, by all means, move the work forward, because, we humans, we made up religion. We, since day one, every religion we have made up as a means of structuring, giving ourselves a framework to try to understand who we are and where we are and what our place is in this universe. It's
right.
all stories. It's been stories the whole time. So nobody's stories are more true than anybody else's stories. And as long as you're going deep and working with other people who are going deep and really questioning your motivations, I think you will find a solid spiritual connection to the world. I think, we're really all looking for connection.
So we had a little technical difficulty, but we're back. So we were something that you said, Sharon, about, like, complaining about people making things up. And you gave an example of, like, don't talk about Celtic chakra systems, right? Like, don't just make up garbage,
Right.
right? But yeah,
But
make
yes,
make
make
things
things
up.
up.
Like,
out of your deep understanding that you come to from your own practice over time.
Yeah,
Definitely make stuff up from that, please.
absolutely. I mean, I'm going to plug something I'm doing. By the time this airs, this thing will be already underway. But, I had this idea, or this longing about 12 or 15, something like that, years ago about, well, who comes after us,
Yeah.
right? And I thought about it and I prayed about it and I worked with our people that are, gods who are people like ourselves, and asked a lot of questions and started to just explore. And I think part of it was out of despair because we have a bad habit at this point in history of projecting our very worst fears and nightmares
Guilty.
into the future, and that there is not going to be any future, and that the whole planet will be dead and there'll be no more people and there'll be nothing, right? And I needed to find out if that was true,
Hmm.
right? All of our movies are about apocalypse or surviving
It's true.
apocalypse or not surviving apocalypse, and how authoritarian and fascistic the leadership can be, right? I mean, we,
Yeah.
our kids, my kids who are millennial and Gen Z, grew up on that,
Right.
right? And I thought, there's got to be, I just can't accept that. And I don't want to base my life sort of being in despair, being infuriated all of the time, being terrified all of the time. And so, I slowly figured out how to go there.
Hmm.
It's not time travel. I am very aware I'm sitting at my altar, but we know we can go back. We know
Yes.
we talk to our
Yes.
ancestors. We know that they're blessing our lives when we ask them to.
Yep.
We know that they are supporting and upholding us. And the way that our tradition taught me, anyway, about what happens to us when we die, right?
Hmm.
We're not dead. We're not, we're just not here,
Right.
right? Like, in my gnosis from that material, we leave the body and we leave the personality, but
Right.
the soul goes with us.
Hmm.
The soul is eternal, right? It has its own evolution, but it's in time frames too large for us to comprehend. So how, if I'm not dead, right? If just my body and the personality I developed and wore in this lifetime is gone, but my spirit, my soul goes on, that means that the our ancestors are here with us now,
Yeah.
all of them,
Indeed.
right?
Right.
It could be the barista. It
Hmm.
could be you, right? You could be my ancestor, or vice versa, because it's the spirit that comes back with a new body
Hmm.
and develops a new personality in accordance with the rules and regulations and indoctrinations of the culture that we're born in and the dysfunctions of the families that we're born into. So I thought, how that's all one thing, right? That's one sort of like, oh, the ancestors are here with us, right? We can worship or give homage or respect and offerings and have relationship with the ancestors that we remember, right?
Hmm.
Or whose names that we know. But sometimes maybe if you're putting flowers and a cup of coffee on the altar for someone and offering them a blessing and a thank you, that somebody who's walking around in the world right now is actually receiving that blessing.
I love that. I love that. You know,
And
this,
somebody is leaving offerings to an ancestor that we're receiving.
right now.
Right.
I
So
love
the
that.
ancestors are here now. The living, as we define it, are here now. the descendants are here now, and I'm not talking about blood, right?
Right.
And so I thought, how do I get to the descendants that are there, though, that are in what we perceive in the way that we perceive time? How do
Hmm.
we get there?
Hmm.
And the work gave me hope
Yeah, that's wonderful. You made my
because they're
day the other
there, right?
day
Like I
saying
definitely
that.
didn't
Yeah.
want to go 2 generations. I went like I want to go like 5 generations or more down.
I do
And there
think
are
two
people,
generations.
right? And they're living in a really different kind of life than we live from what I saw, right?
Mhm.
They were living more of a agrarian shepherding kind of lifestyle in a very green landscape. There weren't lots of people. They didn't have a lot of the luxuries that we enjoy. It looked to me like we were living the way that we always did until about 200 years ago,
Mhm. Imagine
right?
that.
Yeah. And that's okay because we did
It
that
is
for
okay.
millennia, right? And
Yep.
we were fine. It's living like we are that has gotten us to where we are on the planet, what we've done to the planet, what we're doing to one another,
Right.
what our focus is, what we think is important. And so
Painfully
that's
short-sighted.
something, people can say, "Oh, she just made that up." Well, no, some of it was oral tradition that was passed to me, and some of it's personal gnosis, and some of
Right.
it is studying other traditions and what do they think about reincarnation and what do they think about the future and what is in the anatomy of the soul, right?
Mhm.
And it's really good work.
Yeah, and I think we have to, we don't know all the answers, not by a long shot.
No.
Science doesn't know all the answers by a long shot. And wouldn't it be boring if we did? This unfolding we're little specks in the scope of the entire universe with galaxy upon galaxy upon galaxy. So we have to intuit our way into some of the things that science doesn't have answers for. And I've always had a sense, for a variety of reasons, with a variety of experiences to feed this sense, that there is some sort of continuity of consciousness that continues after our bodies give out,
Mhm.
and that continues on in some way. And this is why it was so important for me to suck it up and pay for my mom's fancy Jewish funeral, because I do believe that my mom has a soul, and it is important for her that her funeral rites directed her to where she wants to go as a soul. She wants to go to Jehovah. She wants to go to Yahweh. If that is her wish, and it sure would have been easier and less of a financial burden on me if she could have just gotten cremated and scattered out to sea like the rest of my family.
My parents as well. Out,
Yeah,
that's what they chose to do.
the scatter out to sea bit.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
mean,
and
that's well,
it's
now that
why I
we
go to the same place in Rhode Island that I always go to because we went there when I was a
oh,
child. I raised my kids there for a few years, and that's just our home ocean, right?
my
So,
parents was Carmel, which is
yeah,
another beautiful ocean that we should visit someday.
we will. We will. We're gonna go to all of the oceans,
That sounds wonderful.
if everything works out so that we can.
I figured I would be cremated and scattered to sea, but now that human composting is an option, I'm very intrigued by that, I must say.
Yeah, I am not. I'm like,
You're like,
no.
nope, scatter me to sea. Thank
I'm
you very
like,
much.
just get it over with.
Get it done. Get
The
her
worms
done.
and the maggots,
Not down with that.
I, I
I
guess
guess that's something to
I'm not that
consider.
kind of witch, right? I'm like, put fire and water, is good for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish that we had more time to just go
Hmm.
on and on and on and on and on
Yep.
because now I want to talk to you about losing our parents, right?
Yeah.
Because that's a thing that happens
Yep.
at our
Yep.
age. I have older siblings, who are as old as some of my friends' parents.
Yeah. Wow.
And yeah, the loss and the grief that happens as we start losing beloveds. And
That's one thing that makes Crohn's fierce, I think, is that we are forced to come to terms with death. And I think that the sooner any person can come to terms with death, the more freeing their lives will feel.
yeah,
Because it is a condition of this state of existence. It's coming for all of us, and to deny it and push it away doesn't do you any favors.
it's a law of nature,
Yep.
right? One of Francesca de Grandis's lines that I always remember is, "I know the laws of nature are you, lady," right? Keep
Yep.
me mindful. And I think it's easy to sort of recite that as I
Mhm.
did, right? When I was 30. And now at 60, when I recite that, I say all of these cycles that are happening all around us, the waning and the waxing and the dying and the rising moon, and the same with the sun, and the same with the seasons. And it's the same with our souls,
It is.
you know?
It is. And
Um,
why have we adopted this horror of death? I think it's because we don't understand it. But we can just as easily choose to see death as another type of birth. We're birthed into this realm and then we're birthed back out of this realm.
yeah. And even the Roman Catholic Church understands that
Hmm.
because they have seven sacraments, right? Which are rites of passage over the course of your lifetime. And the last one is your last rites. It
Hmm.
is a rite of passage
It is.
into
It is.
whatever I think, whatever you believe, wherever you think you're going to go, that's where you go. Whatever
That's
you
why it
think
was
is going
so
to happen
important. Yeah. I mean,
directs
our
you.
thoughts, as in life, our thoughts guide us on a path.
Yeah,
And you know what? If we're wrong and we're just snuffed out and that's it and it's all materialistic, we're not going to know any different.
that's right.
It's
And
not
my
going to bother
beliefs
us.
comforted me while I was alive, right?
Exactly.
So that's all good. We don't have to be right. And I think that that's one of the things about this age as well, is understanding I'm not always right,
Right. Exactly. And that you can
right?
be okay with that and it doesn't make you a terrible person.
Hmm. But when I know I'm right, when I know I'm right, I'm right.
Yep. Yep.
And I'm stubborn about it, right? Um, and then there are a lot of things that I don't care to be stubborn about anymore
Yeah. Yeah.
because I got other things to do.
Yeah.
I got gardens to grow and a grandbaby to look forward to, and
That's so amazing.
I can't. Yeah.
It's
So,
amazing.
so I think it's going to be February 1st that this comes out, which is appropriate, right? We'll launch this
Indeed.
on in
Absolutely.
bulk,
I
Kindle
like
Mass,
being,
read, whatever you want to, whatever you call it,
yep.
whoever you are.
I like the idea of coming out on Bridget's Day.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
was definitely a core goddess for me for a long time.
She still is for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She probably still is for me too, although I find myself not really working with gods or goddesses right now. I'm very much about the undercurrent currents of the earth
Hmm.
around me. I'm very much in nature spirit space. Like, who's the god of the sea? Who's the god of that tree that's outside my window?
Yeah. And that's hyper local
Yeah.
animism, right?
Which is interesting that I'm in this hyper local phase right now because I've done so much traipsing all over the country in my earlier years. And I do feel very hyper local right now.
Hmm.
And I feel like that is something that we are really going to need in the coming times
Yep.
is,
We better know where we are.
yeah, and that our neighbors have our backs and that we have their backs.
Yep.
And I'm lucky I live in a neighborhood where we do kind of know each other and talk to each other and have little gatherings for each other.
Same,
It's really
same.
nice.
Yeah. Well, we are out of time. I
Okay,
will let
fair
you
enough.
know when this is going to air, but I think February 1st is the time.
Sounds good.